Hi everybody, welcome to this week's Who's Who Storytime. And this week we're talking about Tito Puente, who is known as the King of Mambo, the King of Latin music, the Godfather of Salsa. He's known by many titles. He was born in 1923 in a neighborhood in New York called Spanish Harlem, and he went to the Juilliard School of Music. Tito Puente, along with many other Latin musicians, was at the epicenter. So he was like the man in the 1940s and 1950s when Latin music just took off and became super popular in clubs, in movies, on TV. It was just a huge movement for Latin music, and he was one of the reasons that happened. He was very popular. At the time, he was performing at the Palladium Theater, which when it opened in 1947, it was only for white audiences. Only white people were allowed to perform, and only white people were allowed in. And a music manager saw how poorly it was doing and said, you should bring in some Latin musicians. So they brought in Tito Puente and a bunch of other musicians, and it just took off. At first, he was only performing matinees, so only in the afternoons, but he was so popular that he ended up performing every single night at the Palladium Theater to sold out crowds. That's pretty cool. And then eventually the Palladium Theater integrated to allow Black audiences and Latin audiences and Hispanic audiences to come in and dance. So during his lifetime, Tito Puente recorded over 118 albums. 118 albums! That's insane! That's a lot of music! And he won 5 Grammy Awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah. So he was amazing. And the book we're reading about him this week is called Tito Puente, Mambo King by Monica Brown and illustrated by Rafael Lopez. And this book is actually written in English and Spanish. So I'm going to read both parts. So it's a little long when I do that, but I thought I would read both parts. And as always, we're going to look at the back of the book to find out more information because I love the back of nonfiction books. Once again, there is a biography about Tito Puente. It's written in English and then in Spanish. And there's something really cool in this one, and that's a line of music. So this is just a simple rumba beat, and it's traditionally played with bongos, congas, and the timbales, which was Tito Puente's instrument of choice, the timbales. All right, so let's get started and let's read. Tito Puente, Mambo King. All right, ready? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, clap your hands for Tito Puente. The Mambo King plays and sways as people dance the mambo, the rumba, and the cha-cha. Damas y caballeros, niños y niñas, aplaudan a Tito Puente. El rey de mambo toca su música y se balancea mientras la audiencia baila el mambo, la rumba y la cha-cha-cha. Before he could walk, Tito was making music. He banged spoons and forks on pot and pans, windowsills, and cans. Aún antes de caminar, Tito ya hacía música. Usaba cucharas y tenedores para golpear ollas y sartenes. Alfezares y latas. There he is, just banging away on those pots and pans. He was so loud, his neighbors in Spanish Harlem said, "Get that boy some music lessons." And that is exactly what his mother did. Hacía tanto ruido que sus vecinos de el barrio de Harlem decían, "Lleven a ese niño a tomar clases de música." Y eso es exactamente lo que hizo su mamá. Tito loved to dance too. A Tito también le encantaba bailar. So that's him tapping away. Tip, tap, tap, tip, tap. Every year, his church held a Stars of the Future contest. Little Tito danced and spun and tapped and drummed, and Tito won! He was named King of the Stars, another title. Over the years, Tito became the king 4 times. Cada año su iglesia auspiciaba un concurso llamado Las Estrellas del Futuro. El pequeño Tito bailó, giro, zapateo, tamboreo y Tito ganó. Lo coronaron rey de las estrellas. Al paso de los años, Tito fue nombrado rey 4 veces. Look how happy he is. And El Rey means the king. When he wasn't playing music, Tito played baseball with sticks on the streets of his neighborhood. Cuando no estaba tocando música, Tito jugaba al béisbol con palos de madera en las calles de su barrio. Tito performed at parties, restaurants, clubs. His first band was called Los Happy Boys, and their music made people happy. Tito tocaba en fiestas, restaurantes y clubes nocturnos. Su primera banda se llamaba Los Happy Boys. Su música hacía que la gente se sintiera feliz. During World War II, Tito was in the Navy. He joined the ship's band and learned to play the saxophone and write music. After the war, Tito went to the Juilliard School of Music and dreamed of having his own band. Tito formó parte de la Marina durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Allí se unió a la banda de su barco y aprendió a tocar el saxófono y a escribir música. Después de la guerra, Tito estudió en la Escuela de Música Juilliard. Soñaba con tener su propia orquesta. There's the Palladium. On weekends, Tito played magical mambos and beautiful cha-chas with different bands at the Palladium Ballroom in New York City. People loved dancing to salsa and the rhythms of Tito and his timbales. Still, he wished he could be the band leader. Durante los fines de semana, Tito tocaba mambos mágicos y cha-cha-chas bellos con diferentes bandas en el Salón de Baile Palladium en Nueva York. A la audiencia le encantaba bailar al son de la salsa y de los diferentes ritmos que Tito tocaba con sus timbales. Sin embargo, él seguía deseando ser director de una orquesta. Tito's dream finally came true when he led his very own big band, the Tito Puente Orchestra. He wrote music and recorded more than 100 albums. He made music with Celia Cruz, Santana, and La Lupe. El sueño de Tito al fin se hizo realidad cuando logró dirigir su propia orquesta, la Orquesta de Tito Puente. Tito escribió su propia música y grabó más de 100 álbumes. Hizo música con Celia Cruz, Santana y La Lupe. When the Tito Puente Orchestra played, the tambourine sounded like rain on metal roofs. Cuando la orquesta de Tito Puente tocaba, los panderetas sonaban como la lluvia cayendo sobre tecos de metal. The horns blew high and loud and strong and low. Los cuernos soplaban altos y agudos, fuertes y graves. The claves smacked clackety clackety clack clack, and everyone's feet went tappity tap. Best of all, Tito played the timbales. Los claves se golpeaban clackety clackety clack, y todos los pies hacían tappity tap. Y lo mejor de todo, Tito tocaba sus timbales. In 1979, Tito won a very special award called a Grammy, the first of 5. It was a way of saying, thank you, Tito. Thank you, Mambo King. Thank you for making us want to dance and sing. En 1979, Tito recibió un premio muy especial llamado el Grammy, el primero de 5 que recibiría durante su vida. El premio fue una forma de decir gracias, Tito, gracias, Rey del Mambo, gracias por inspirarnos a bailar y a cantar. Oh, I flipped it upside down. The dancers twirled, the lights swirled, and the mambo went on and on. Los bailarinas giraban, los luces daban vueltas en espiral, y el mambo seguía y seguía. The end. El fin. And that was Tito Puente, Mambo King, Rey del Mambo. Hope you look up more music that he wrote and performed when we're done. If you just go to YouTube and look up Tito Puente, there's so much you could listen to. So I hope you do that. And I hope to see you next week for another Who's Who story time. All right. Bye.